Well, joining me to discuss is the former Economic Secretary to the Treasury, Justine Greening. Good evening, Justine. I'm just reading Jim Pickard, the political correspondent for the FT's tweet. He says, in under an hour, Johnson has seen his odds tumble from 20 to 1 to just 3 to 1 since he threw his hat in the ring. That would be an extraordinary state of affairs, wouldn't it, if Boris Johnson was to return?
I suppose so. But on the other hand, it was Boris Johnson that won this big thumping electorate mandate that got the Conservative Party its huge majority in Parliament today. And I think the big mistake that Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng made was leaving that election-winning mandate of levelling up behind and setting it on one side. It seemed to me that what they didn't understand was that levelling up is the economic strategy for how you drive better productivity in Britain in the long term, and that you don't just get to cast aside a mandate that the British people have supported wholeheartedly and then come up with your own. And I think whoever is running for leader next, that might well include Boris again, will have to set out how they're going to deliver on the mandate that the British people have already voted on. It is a really simple question that people want answered, which is, how are you going to deliver levelling up? And I think whichever candidate has the most credible answer on that, Christian, that's the one that isn't just going to pull the Conservative Party back together. I think it's the one that can actually get Britain back on track and get some confidence back in our government internationally.
But Justine, that mandate was a lifetime away in 2019. And of course, we exist in a parliamentary system. The Prime Minister can govern so long as he has the confidence, or she has the confidence of the House of Parliament. But the question is, a lot of people are asking, after the chaos of the last few months, isn't it time that the Conservatives took this to the country and let the people decide?
And I go back to my point, in a sense, the more that the Conservative Party and government moves away from that election-winning mandate it got, then inevitably the more those calls will grow. And the longer this chaos goes on, the more those calls will grow. The bottom line is the Conservative Party is in government. I was in an incoming Conservative government. I spent time in opposition.
Do you think it is governable?
Only if it can pull together around this common thread of levelling up. That my experience is the one thing that the parliamentary party all agrees in. You can argue that Boris Johnson's government was losing in London back in May, early this year, because it was essentially saying that levelling up didn't matter in the capital city. This is the one issue, Christian, that whether you're in the public or in Parliament, people can get behind. And I think the sooner the Conservative Party in power can get back on track with levelling up and realise that it's an economic strategy as well, that is the only way you're really going to put public finances back into order for the long term. We've got businesses crying out for skills that they can't find. It's one of the biggest hinders for growth we've got, the biggest barriers. That's the way we'll get Britain back on track. And I think this leadership contest surely has to be about how we can find that next leader of the Conservative Party and Prime Minister that is able to understand that this is what people want delivered.
Yeah, well, let's face it, people want some certainty. I listened to the owner of a brewery today who was told that there would be an energy price cap for 2 years and that there would be a cut to alcohol duties, and then both of them were scrapped the following week. You just can't run a business like that. People can't make any decisions, and that's why we need the sort of certainty that you're talking about. But let me ask you this, because I put this question to somebody a little earlier, hesitating to look back at the legacy of Liz Truss, but did she open something for all the parties to consider? Has something changed in the last few weeks that means all the parties need to look at how the country is funded and the strategy for growth?
Well, clearly you have to get Britain on track financially, but I think we all have to recognise that it's lives off track that cost the taxpayer money, not lives that are on track and successful and contributing. And that's why go on about this a lot. I talk about levelling up a lot, but it is so fundamental to not just our society, but how we have a better functioning, higher productivity economy. It is mad that we're in a Britain today that is truly concerned about a cost of living crisis, putting food on the table, heating heating our homes, when at the same time we have businesses around this country with high paid, high skilled jobs that cannot find the people to do them. Levelling up is about fixing that problem, and it will be a win-win for the whole country. That's what the markets want to see, a long-term approach to getting Britain on track. And I think if we can't understand now, in this crisis that we face today, that's what we've got to get on and do. I'm not sure how clear it has to be in Parliament that it's levelling up that we now have to get on with and start delivering. That's a long-term strategy. We need some shorter-term steps to help people get through the coming months that are going to be very difficult. But in a sense, we can't duck that underlying challenge that Britain faces. And that's what people in the country want us to get on with. That's what they actually voted for. And it's now time, I think, that we saw a government bringing forward a much longer term strategy on that. I think what people were interested in were skills and education and connecting up to opportunities, much more than tax cuts. And that's where Liz Truss went wrong.